And we are live. See how many people join us. I see Clyde's joined. Hi Clyde. RC's joined. Not sure if Natalie's in here as well. Thanks for joining, guys. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining me as part of this small little celebration, and we'll talk about that going forward. Feel free to drop your comments and your questions in the chat. Yeah, I'd love to answer any questions that you guys may have. And yeah, feel free to chat. Yeah, this is, as I said, this is just it's a little celebration. It's been a long, hard slog to get to 1,000 subscribers, and many of you in here already, have been a big support and have been watching my videos in this channel for a long time. A small creator from South Africa, just doing his part as part of activism, just creating awareness of these issues that we discuss in the channel, cults and so forth. So yeah, just an appreciation little live today, which I wanted to just share with everybody, and just come inside here and chat. Let's talk. There's been quite a bit of developments, in the ExJW community and the JW community. So let's discuss a lot of those things. I see Tim's arrived. Hello, Tim. Thanks for joining. Good to see you. So yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. It's long overdue that I get to 1,000 subscribers, because from here on I can invite a lot of other members to come on and do interviews with me and join the live. So I'm aiming to do this once a week, if I can, because I think lives gives you much more freedom to chat to and connect with people in the chat as well. So Geechee Farmer is here. So yeah, thanks for joining, guys. Yeah, feel free. I love this. Thank you for the support. Feel free to donate and to subscribe to this channel, because it's only with your guys' support that I've gotten this far, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, thank you. Really love it. So let's kick off. As people join, I'll see who else joins us. But some interesting stuff before I get to the talk about the JW stuff. What I wanted to mention, South Africa, as in one of my first streams I had more than a year ago, we've got quite a cult, a lot of cults that spring up in this country, and awareness needs to be created around this issue. And one of the big, which was one of the big issues in South Africa in the past 2 years, was a documentary that I want you guys to go and watch. I'm not sure if it's available on Hulu. I know it's available on Showmax, or I'm not sure it's available on Netflix as well, but it's called Devil's Dorp. And it's a South African 4-part true crime documentary. It's a television series, and it depicts and analyzes the 11 killings that happened here in South Africa, in Krugersdorp, by a group called Electus per Deus, meaning chosen by God, between 2012 to 2016. It's a very interesting documentary. There was a book written about it as well. The investigating officer actually wrote a book about how we track down these cult leaders and takes you in depth into the whole cult killings here in South Africa, and it's called On the Devil's Trail: How I Hunted Down the Krugersdorp Killers, by Melinda Ferguson Books. It was written in collaboration with the Sunday Times journalist Nikki Goulds. So if you can check out that book, it's a very interesting story. It made headlines here. in South Africa, cult killings where 11 people were killed by this cult. So look out for that. It's called Devil's Dorp. It's a documentary. I'm sure it's on Hulu. I think I saw it on Hulu. So those of you in the States will probably be able to see it. So yeah, that's I wanted to mention. And what's been happening, which has also been interesting, which I've been following in the news and especially on TikTok, because this has been a massive thing on TikTok, is the Mormon Church has actually, ruled that they can. The Mormon Church has had the very same issue as the Jehovah's Witnesses having covering up child sexual abuse. And they've discouraged their members and their parishioners to actually report as well, and also trying to handle it internally, which we all know how that goes, according to us that know the whole Jehovah's Witness issue with the two-witness rule and how they've been covering it up. So that's been a huge expose currently in the Mormon Church, which is very interesting. I've been following that story. And interesting enough, I've had discussions here in South Africa in the week with a former Mormon. And he's actually told me that he's been watching this very, very closely. Because here in South Africa, there's also been some instances and issues around child sexual abuse in the Mormon Church here. So let's see how that plays out, because it's gaining momentum worldwide as well, just as the Jehovah's Witness issue and the Catholic issue gained momentum worldwide. So yeah, very interesting developments. I think it's an issue where people are feeling the need to come forward, victims, because it's now out in the open and these things are not covered up anymore. They're being reported on much more frequently, which is a good thing. And we need to highlight these issues. We need to, because it's all about protecting the children in these organizations. And especially in South Africa, there's still a hesitancy to actually come forward, and to speak out about that. I'm hoping that we can get South Africans to come out more and speak up about these issues as well, because believe you me, there's been things covered up in a lot of congregations here in South Africa too. So I'm hoping that by others coming forward and speaking up, especially in South Africa, we can really expose and show people that we want to protect the children in those organizations. So, and then, what was also very interesting, and I think this has happened, this came out in May, which was very surprising. The Southern Baptist Convention had dropped a 300-page report on their sexual abuse in that organization. So that was quite alarming, 300-page report. And what I always say is that, there's organizations that, like the Southern Baptist, but they've released their records and they've released the reports, for everybody to see. It's out in the open and it's leaked. And then you have organizations like, of course, our former organization that still tries to cover up and protect the image of the organization, which is a shame, which is a real shame. So yeah, I'm hoping that we just got to push on. And I've been sharing the Call Bethel podcast far and wide here in South Africa, hoping it reaches some people on the inside. And Jillian, was one very instrumental in that Call Bethel podcast. So kudos to the Telegraph for doing that and exposing the rot and the cover-ups there. We need more of that going forward, and it's it's only by voices like ours, like mine, like yours, in whichever little way we can, just to keep speaking up. So, yeah, um, yeah. So, yeah, continue, guys. Drop your questions in the chat, and I'll answer whatever you feel free to ask me questions in the chat, and I'll talk about it. Also, we know that the Jehovah's Witnesses have gone back to house witnessing now recently, which is very interesting. We've all seen maybe on social media the pictures of them. The carts are out again. Very, very interesting. We'll see how that goes because, if I was a witness and that letter that was read out to the congregations about everybody going back to witnessing and door to door, I would not be a happy chappy because it's been quite a journey over the past 2 years. Being very cooped up indoors and doing Zoom meetings and not going house to house, which was, I think, a lot of people started thinking about this whole issue. There's some more people joined, women of the then, and thank you for joining. I love your channel. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoy it. Thanks for joining us this evening or this afternoon, wherever you are. So yeah, I think, and Riley did something, Jexit, he did something very interesting on TikTok, how to give, Jehovah's Witnesses some advice on how to avoid going from house to house. The excuses, because look, the pandemic the COVID is still around, so we've got people with comorbidities that's still at risk. Trying to tell people how to avoid going and knocking on the door. And look, I'll be honest with you, South Africa, and I'm talking about South Africa at the moment, where the conditions we face in this country, going from house to house is a risk. Because many times the witnesses have to go into areas and suburbs and where it's quite dangerous, and for women right now, going from house to house, knocking on doors with small children, it's not a good idea. It really is not a good idea. And you're right, Clyde, the society is definitely tone deaf. In reading the room, in reading what's happening in the world and in suburbs, and especially places like South Africa, where it's really, really not safe to do that. And I would kick up a fuss. I would never, yeah. So very interesting. So RC says, for your information, Devil's Dorp is unfortunately unavailable on Netflix or Hulu in the US. I will look out for the book. Okay, good. I'm hoping they release it, onto more streaming platforms, because it's a very, very good documentary. Very interesting documentary. The book should be available on Amazon, I think, RC. So yeah, look out for that. But yeah, and just going back onto, the whole house-to-house ministry, and I saw somebody mention that, back in our day, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, there were no carts. So I remember standing on the street corners, what they used to call Saturday street work. You had to approach people with the magazines and actually approach people and talk to them on the street. It seems as nowadays the cart witnessing is where the literature is displayed, and you just stand there and hope people would approach you and strike up a conversation. Whereas back in our day, we had to make the conscious effort to approach people on the street to actually offer the literature and the Watchtower and Awake magazines, especially on Saturday mornings, I could recall. So, it's been, our times have changed, but of course, they've become very much tele-evangelists themselves now with JW Broadcasting. And I can remember how they used to in JW circles years ago, how they used to criticize the tele-evangelism that used to happen on television. And look, now they're part of the norm. They've fallen into the mainstream tele-evangelistic norms that we see today. Yeah, so once again, the whole hypocrisy and doctrinal flip-flops that goes on within the organization. Yeah, very, very interesting. For those of you who are new to the channel or don't know my background, I'm from South Africa and grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, baptized at the age of 13, and left 25 years, well, 2005 I left the organization, so I've been at it. Activism on and off, wrote 2 books. Yeah, I was very active for a while, and then took a little bit of a break, but with everything that's happened subsequently with the uncovering of child sexual abuse issues within the organization, it was time for me to just really, really also step up and speak out again. So, yeah. So that was just reading what people saying in the chats. Having had the period of time at home, not going door to door, I think many will reflect on the dangers of field service now, especially as for their health, they've been allowed not to. Absolutely. Yeah. Health reasons and the dangers of going and knocking on people's doors. Yeah. And I suspect they're going to get a lot of, people not wanting to invite them in for obvious reasons. RC says, I never could do street work, just too much. Yeah, RC, that was, man, I used to hate it, standing on street work on a Saturday morning in town, in the city, downtown cities, wonderful. I hope none of my schoolmates pass by, and see me doing this on the street corners on a Saturday morning. Yeah. Hey, Dean's here. Hey, Dean. Thank you for joining. Dean Kruger, he's from Cape Town. I was on his channel last weekend and last week's Sunday. So very interesting discussion we had there on that channel, on Dean's channel. Surprisingly, I had another ExJW from South Africa on the channel with me, with Dean. So that was good to see, a former elder. So I really enjoyed that discussion. Thanks for joining, Dean. Yeah, Clyde says street work on the beach wasn't too bad. Oh wow, you were lucky, Clyde. Street work on the beach, of course, wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, well, I grew up in a little town that was 30 minutes away from the beach. So yeah, I had to just grin and bear on a Saturday morning. Yeah, Mark says, let's hope a proportion of JWs will simply not resume the door-to-door, giving various excuses. Yeah, Mark, we only hope. I think a lot of people are hoping that, it doesn't. They can put it off as long as possible. I mean, I would, if I was in that situation, I would really put it off as long as possible to go back into the house-to-house ministry. So, yeah, developments. I think the organization is, look, and we all know, we've seen the stats, that it is not a very effective way of converting people to the organization or bringing people. That's not a very effective way. The stats show it. So why they still keep on with it, but of course we all know it's a form of controlling people's time, and just trying to keep people in and make them, work as much as possible for the organization. Interesting discussion I had 2 weeks ago about somebody that I met asked me why Jehovah's Witnesses stopped selling the book, the literature, and charging for it. And now, he saw, as one of my old acquaintances here, And he knew about, growing up here and what I used to do when I was a witness as a young man. And he didn't know, and I explained to him why the whole that provision was changed to asking for donations rather than charging a set fee for the literature. And I gave him the backstory about Jimmy Swaggart and how they filed as friend of the court, which a lot of witnesses didn't know. Trying to get around the whole paying for tax and stuff like that. So, yeah, we sometimes you don't realize how actually people watch and look at what you've gone through and look from the outside in and I want to know why things have changed so much. So, yeah. Tim asks, what do you think of the Borg's advice to follow the directions of the governing body, even if it doesn't sound practical from a human standpoint? Yep, Tim, that was, to those of you, there's a quote by the man, this is dangerous, where they tell the rank and file now that they should follow the direction of the governing body, even if it doesn't make sense from a human standpoint. Well, that is very dangerous advice. We all know how Jonestown ended up, and we all know the consequences of just following the organization right, even in its current form, with the whole blood transfusion issue. The organ transplant, and I make an example of the organ transplant issue where organ transplants were prohibited up until 1980, and all of a sudden it was allowed. And then, of course, the question, that begs the question, what about all those people who believed you before then and died because you said it was cannibalism? So following those, I like how Tim puts it, the octopope, the 8 men of the governing body. So yeah, very dangerous advice. When I saw that, Tim, I actually cringed. When I looked at that, and I said, man, wow, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. And we know it's a dangerous cult. They break up families and they blood guilty. Yeah. So Clyde says, I don't think people want to be on a viral doorstep video either. You're right, Clyde. No, definitely not. Definitely not. Because now in the age of social media, every interaction is recorded. And they want to be, we see even in the court witnessing, people record their interactions with the witnesses while doing court witnessing. So I suspect that would be a deterrent as well. Yeah, I think that would be a deterrent. Definitely. So yeah, very interesting points. Thanks for your comments, guys. I really appreciate that and your questions. Keep doing that. I love it. Appreciate it. As I said, this is just a thank you stream for me to just thank all of you guys who have supported me all the years and to get me to this point where all the hard work and the videos that I put out. That just thank you. You guys enjoy it, and it's good to see. It's good to see. I'm just doing my part. In exposing these groups like the JW. So yeah, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. So yeah, just a bit more background about me. I grew up in what the witnesses like to call a divided household. It just shows you one of those things where they try to divide people. Whereas my father was a witness, but my mom was a Congregationalist church member, and of course I leaned more towards my dad's side because dads and sons. But I was drawn in because the pictures in the brochures and the books seemed so appealing. Paradise. So of course that draws you in. You want to live in a paradise like that. And so my journey started. in the witnesses, but as I said, got baptized at the age of 13. And 2 years later, my first alarm bell went off. 2 years later, 1985, when they changed the baptismal questions. I was 15 years old and I was sitting in a convention in Port Elizabeth, in South Africa, and listened to the baptismal talk, and the questions, of course, sounded different to what I was used to. And yeah, I think that was the first alarm bell, where the second question stated that, do you recognize that your baptism is now into the Jehovah's organization and not the Father, Son, Holy Spirit anymore? So that was the first alarm bell that went off for me. And of course, subsequently, all the years growing up in the organization, there were other alarm bells. But of course, you all know you're not allowed to speak up and talk about it, and you have to suppress all these things. So yeah, and eventually I got to a stage where I couldn't, let it be anymore, because it didn't make sense anymore, these things. I started seeing the doctrinal flip-flops and started using their own literature to research, the older literature and how things have changed and stuff like that. And the hypocrisy and quoting people out of context, man, that was a huge thing for me. How they quoted many scholars out of context. So yeah, very, very interesting. So it was a long journey for me getting out of the organization, and of course leaving doesn't of course come without consequence. So yeah. Clyde asks, how was witnessing during apartheid? Very good question, Clyde. Let's paint the picture for you guys. Apartheid in South Africa as a witness. The congregations were segregated to a degree. Where I mean, and I want to explain this, because we had segregation in terms of race, in terms of the whites had their areas where they lived in, so-called colored people had the areas where they lived in, and so-called black people had their areas. So, naturally, kingdom halls were built in those areas. And of course, the vast majority of people who attended those kingdom halls were, the society, the community in those areas. But what used to happen is that, for some reason, there were many elders from that used to come across and be resident in those areas, the non-white areas, which was not a problem. And strangely enough, I don't recall any non-white elders moving to and being resident, well, of course, because of apartheid. But what was interesting during conventions and assemblies, it was integrated. So we'd have integrated conventions and assemblies, the 2-day assemblies and the big district conventions were all integrated. And then from there we would go back to our segregated halls in the different communities and suburbs, which was an interesting dynamic. And of course we couldn't, non-white Jehovah's Witnesses couldn't go and preach in the white areas, and that was because of the apartheid laws and regulations. But it was okay for white Jehovah's Witnesses to come into the non-white areas and do door-to-door and ministry there. Yeah. So, yes, apartheid to a degree. We were segregated, but very much integrated when we used to have the assemblies and district conventions. So yeah, apartheid was quite a interesting dynamic for the witnesses here. And look, the witnesses do pride themselves on non-racialism. However, their early history paints a different picture. We all know that. But and I got flack the other day because I made a TikTok where I said that the governing body I said God or Jehovah favors white males because the 8 men in uh, the governing body are made up of 7 white men and the one black governing body member, Samuel Hurd. And before that, there was never a non-white governing body member. Um, yeah. But apartheid was very interesting, Clyde. It was a very interesting dynamic. Um, yeah, we were integrated at the assemblies, and then we had to go home to our respective um, suburbs and areas where we were segregated from the rest of the races. So, yeah, interesting. Apartheid, white Jehovah's Witnesses who rejected conscription or national military service. It was a requirement in this country for every white male to be called up to do military service, conscription. And of course, Jehovah's Witnesses, who were conscientious objectors at the time, before then, there was a period where they were thrown into normal prisons and treated very, very appallingly, which was actually disgusting. And then afterwards, they put them into detention barracks because they were seen as conscientious objectors, together with other people who were also conscientious objectors. So the white male Jehovah's Witnesses in this country actually, yeah, had quite a hard time when it came to young white males in terms of the whole conscription service and military service call-up, because they were thrown into jail basically and treated as criminals, you know, all for and then later on, and this was so sad because I actually did a podcast about it, where later on the society organization made a concession where these white males could now work in non-combatant roles in the military as cooks and as cleaners or whatever the case may be. Once again, a form to show you how, you know, these doctrinal flip-flops affect people, because there was before this was allowed, a lot of these white Jehovah's Witness males were, you know, tortured and thrown into jail and treated badly, and then you make the announcement or the pronouncement that it's fine, you can now work in the military as in non-combatant roles. Yeah, so begs the question, not so inspired after all, in my opinion. Yeah. RC says, being in the American South and hearing about segregation in Africa during the 80s is surreal. It's like the Twilight Zone. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it was tough, RC. Yeah, and I always say that I think during the 80s and the 70s and the 80s in South Africa, the Jehovah's Witnesses actually grew quite a bit in South Africa, especially under the non-white communities. And that was because the message that they were bringing to the people who were being oppressed seemed appealing, you know. So our kingdom halls were growing. People were falling for this because they were oppressed under the apartheid government. So, yeah, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses come with this message of a hope and a paradise earth and non-racialism and no segregation. So it sounded appealing. And the congregations grew. I mean, the congregation I grew up in, I can tell you now, our Sunday Watchtower talk, public talk and Watchtower study, we used to average sometimes 200 at the Sunday Watchtower study and public talk. So it was quite a, you know, quite a lot of interest shown. But we all know, and that currently, we all know what's happened, and this was even before COVID, and I looked at the congregation I grew up in, it really dwindled. I think currently they are only seeing about 30 to 40, 50 people max at the Kingdom Halls, at that Kingdom Hall where I grew up in. So there's really been a downward trend because of, you know, the exposés and the internet. So Yeah, and the older generation dying out, and no new ones coming in. So, yeah. Tim says we can all do our bit to bring down the tower brick by brick. Keep chipping away, y'all. Absolutely, Tim. It's just around awareness. Keep on creating the awareness, and your little part, no matter how significant, insignificant it may seem, that little bit you do. You don't have to have a big YouTube channel. Just speaking out somewhere, somehow, and protecting the kids, or protecting somebody from getting drawn in, is the small little bit you can do. So yeah, small little bit you can do, your part, to make sure people do not fall prey to these types of organizations, high control groups. I prefer the term high control group now. Yeah, because cult has a very, very negative connotation, although I still like to call these groups cults. But yeah, high control group is a much more appropriate term in my opinion. Yeah. So yeah, that's as I said, keep chipping away, as Tim says. Keep chipping away. Yeah, we all do our little bit. And it's very interesting because I've been watching on social media, especially on Twitter, how there's quite a few people that are coming out and coming in, speaking out, and leaving the organization, and just so it's really paying off. Look, it's hard. We all know it's hard. That's when you leave that bubble, trying to integrate back into society. If you haven't had friends outside, it's hard. We all know that, but there are communities that we can reach out to. And what's so good about it, it's a worldwide community. I mean, I'm sitting here in South Africa and chatting with you guys from all over the world and talking about our experiences, so it's a worldwide community that we can reach out to. So we don't have to feel alone. And I always encourage people to seek out therapy if need be, professional help, which is important. Seek out other former members of your group, in your area, and get together and talk about these things, because it's important that we talk about it and help each other out in terms of just getting rid of that the baggage that the groups that we come out of. And I'm not only talking about the Watchtower. I'm talking about all the other high control groups that we see that people come out of. They have the very same effect on people and in people's lives, breaking up families and so forth. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. Yeah, thanks guys. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. It's been lovely chatting to you. As I said, going forward, I actually want to do a live stream once a week, and I can, it'll give me an opportunity now to get more of the other activists on my channel as well. There's quite a few in the wings that's waiting to have a live stream with me. So, and I'm trying to get more South Africans as well on the channel to interview a lot of South Africans who want to speak out. I think it's about time. It's about time that the African continent and South Africa, we start speaking out as well. We're not alone. We're not alone. I don't know if you guys have seen that there's another book, and I want to get Erica on the show. Erica Boardman, she wrote a book called Mission of Malice, which was her experience in the Kwasiza-Bantu cult here in South Africa as well. Erica's written a very good, heart-wrenching book about her experience in that cult. She's been on quite a few podcasts talking about it. She's won an award for the book recently, and I think she's being featured at a book fair coming up in South Africa, in Cape Town, soon, I think in September. So I want to get Erica on the channel. She's a South African. We've spoken before, so I'll see if I can get her on, and we can speak about her experience as a fellow South African cult member, high control group member, and her experience, the organization that she was a member of. The authorities actually has been busy with an inquiry into the organization. But of course, we all know that these organizations have money behind them, and they can throw money at these things. So just like all the bigger groups as well. So let's see how that goes. I'll try and get Erica on the show next. I don't see Natalie on the show. Well, Natalie, I want to get her on the show because I love Natalie's book, the Cult Girls book that she wrote, the little comic book that she wrote. It's very interesting. I love that because I was such a comic book fan growing up. So I really love her work with that old Cult Girls little novel, graphic novel that she's written. So I want to see if I can get Natalie. We've spoken before, so she can get her on the show as well. So yeah, and then many of the other normal people. RC, yeah, please be sure to drop the book titles and documentaries in the description. I will do. I definitely will do. I'll drop the links in the description below, and then you guys can go and check them out and so forth, and get your hands on them, because it's very interesting reading. And especially I love the South African flavor to it, because it's South African people, that have come out and also spoke up out about their experiences in their groups. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you for joining, everybody. It's almost 10 p.m. in the evening here in South Africa. Wherever you are, thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. I just wanted a little live stream to get to know you guys more and connect with the people who supported me all the way. Let's see if we can do this on a weekly basis, and definitely will see if I can get some of you guys on the show as well. And we can have a good chat. I love chatting to you guys. Thanks for your comments and your questions, and keeping the conversation going. And thank you once again for your support over the years. There's many of you that have been, many of you guys have subscribed to the channel recently, but everybody's appreciated, and I really, really appreciate your input and your support. Feel free to. I want to grow this channel, so make sure that more people are being reached with this type of content as well. So yeah, feel free to donate if you want to, and because this will all just go to making the channel better and reaching more people. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Clyde, RC, Tim, Mark, all of you guys that have been on here. Really good chatting to you, and looking forward to the next live with you guys. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.